You know, folks, when it comes to movies, mostly animated movies, getting sequels, hold on for a sec. Like I say, when it comes to, animated movies, mostly animated movies getting sequels, a lot of us like to criticize how the sequel to an animated film pales in comparison to the original movie. Especially when that sequel is a direct-to-video sequel and most of the animation used is standard television animation, whether it's CGI or 2D animation. Now, sometimes a sequel can actually be pretty good, even despite the animation that it uses. But some sequels can also be bad because they do think that fans of the original movie feel didn't need to be done. Now, like a lot of you out there, I'm a fan of Bob Thomas's Bobsheaux. And just like a lot of the reviewers like him, Bob basically had to focus most of his reviews and upload most of his reviews onto Dailymotion now, as well as onto YouTube, Vimeo, Zipcast, wherever he could go, because of the fact that Blimp TV is extinct. And when he did his family vacation review, I'm pretty sure he did that before Blimp TV went down the toilet. Now, with that said, a lot of people have, hold on for a second. Now, with that said, a lot of people have criticized Bob for his reviews of the Alpha Omega series. Now, if you don't count the original Alpha Omega movie, which was shown in theaters, and you just count the direct-to-video sequels, you can probably understand why maybe Bob, has basically has a lot to say about them, but not in a positive way. Now, the Alpha Omega movie, the original theatrical film, even though I didn't see much of it, the trailer for it got me hooked to want to see it. So when I did rent it from Netflix and DVD fabbed it to a DVD so that I could have a copy, I saw several of the scenes and I thought it was alright. I even looked and I thought it was alright and I became a fan of it, and I decided, you know what, I might as well go out and get the movie. And I did on Blu-ray. When I finally got a Blu-ray here and in my room, I finally decided to get it on Blu-ray, even from Amazon, even though my job now has it for $5, essentially the same price I paid off Amazon, in a display that you could see as soon as you walk into the store and walk down Action Alley. So even though it's now worth $5, which of course is common for a lot of movies, Blu-ray or not, to end up as 5 years or 4 years after they're released, whether or not they're good or not, the fact is people still like Alpha and Omega. They do. They have nothing against it. They have nothing against this movie because the characters are fun. Because there are certain characters that are fun, a majority of the main cast, if you will, like Humphrey, Kate, Garth, and Lily are pretty fun characters, especially Lily in the eyes of some. And the soundtrack's good. The animation is, at most times, if you're not critical, is beautiful to look at. So there's nothing really wrong with it. Now, I know some people might criticize the animation. Well, let's not forget, this is the animation studio, the same animation studio that is known for doing the Nest family series of the New Testament from the Bible, or Bible stories from the New Testament. That is what they're known for. If you don't believe me, I'll give you an example. This is what they're known for. That's right. This. That is what they're known for. They're also known for doing another movie that got a bunch of sequels, and that is The Swan Princess. The Swan Princess, of course, the original movie was distributed by Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers basically had a hit on their hands, even though, according to Nostalgia Critic, and it's obviously true, it was released at a time when Disney, seeing a threat because of the promotional work that this was getting on television and across the board, Disney decided to re-release The Lion King only a few months after it left theaters, and essentially a few weeks before it hit, VHS at that time. Because DVD was like 2 years away from being a known fact, from becoming a household, from becoming a DVD was essentially about 2 years away from being the new medium for home entertainment, for home video, for distributing and buying movies on. But anyway, with that said, even though it was not that much of a commercial success, it was a success enough, a hit enough with a decent core audience, if you will, that later on it got some sequels. Most of the sequels were 2D animation, until the last one or so, which was the first CGI sequel to The Swan Princess. Now, when comparing that to Alpha Omega, a lot of people might say that The Swan Princess might have better animation, even CGI-wise, with the last sequel being in CGI. That might be true, but I'm sure a lot of people will say that the one thing that they all have in common, CGI or 2D, is the animation quality does go down from the original theatrical quality. And that is true. And that's one thing that Bob and several other people rip on when it comes to the Alpha Omega series. The fact that the animation quality goes down so much that it looks like it's almost Video Bocado, or whatever that independent video distributor of movie rip-offs is, Video Bocado quality. Almost. But not at that level just yet. But here's the thing. Crest Animation and Lion Gates are not the only ones. Like I said, Warner Brothers is guilty of this, because I'm sure they helped distribute some of the Swan Princess sequels, and I'm sure, Crest did it on their own as well through Lion Gates, but still, that, again, Warner Brothers had to have helped out there. They've also done some direct-to-video animated sequels of some of their movies, and again, they're not the only other studio besides Crest. Even Disney is not innocent, as isn't innocent at all as well. Disney is, well, maybe not as guilty, but just as guilty in several areas when it comes to the sequels. Now, a good example I'll give you would be The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now, the sequel, which is advertised right here, was critically panned by a lot of fans and even critics because of the animation quality and story. It was. The same with Pocahontas in her sequel, Pocahontas 2, Journey to the New World, or whatever it was called. They were both critically panned because of animation and the portrayal of the characters, and the portrayal and the different portrayal of the characters from the original movie. Now, the other sequels that have came out direct to video, I'm not too sure have gotten the same treatment. I'm not too sure about the Mulan 2 one. I'm not too sure about the Tarzan and Jane one, which was basically a compilation sequel to the series. and sort of a finale for it as well, along with some original animation. And I'm not sure about the prequel, Tarzan 2, which kind of talked about Tarzan's life as a kid in the jungle before the original movie. I'm not too sure about that one, but I'll just have to wait and see. Maybe other people know about it and I don't. I know Milo's Return, which was the Atlantis sequel. I'm not too sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that's along the same lines of Hunchback 2 and Pocahontas 2. I'm pretty sure it is. But there are several direct-to-video sequels, even that used the traditional Walt Disney television animation, that did a decent job at portraying the characters as they were and giving us a good story. Return of Jafar, which was the sequel to Aladdin, as well as the pilot to the Aladdin series, was critically acclaimed, giving 2 thumbs up by Siskel and Ebert, because of the fact that it was a decent continuation of the series, of the movie, as well as, even though the animation quality was down, the characters were portrayed the way they were last seen. They were last seen in the movie, in the original movie, as well as at the same time, while still portraying those characters as they were, they actually made room to decently introduce some new characters like Obvious Mall and a few others. As well as the third sequel, the second sequel, the third movie in the trilogy, was actually well received. It was actually well received. Because one, not only did it serve as a finale to the trilogy of movies, as well as a series finale to the series, but again, it was done in such a way that the animation, even though, again, it was Disney television animation, was a step up from the Return of Jafar animation, a step up from the animation used in Return of Jafar as well as in the series, or mostly the Return of Jafar. It was a step up, a major step up, and it basically kept the characters true to themselves, again, just like with the Return of Jafar, along with introducing new characters like Aladdin's father, Qasim, and the villain Saluk, along with several others. A decent job. And people love them. So, again, Disney has done good when it comes to their animated, direct-to-video animated sequels. Lion King Simba's Pride is another good example. Here's one that a lot of people liked, came out about a year or two, basically about a year or so, 4 years actually after the original movie, and was a decent follow-up to the movie. In fact, many people said that it belonged alongside The Lion King the way it was done, story-wise and character-wise, even though it had that Disney animation, Disney television animation that we're used to seeing, but the Disney television animation was definitely on par when it came, was almost on par to the movie, not there, but definitely a step up, I should say, definitely a step up from what we had seen in, like I said, Return of Jafar, and even a step up, well, definitely a major step up from what we saw in the Timon and Pumbaa series. But again, that was, and again, just the way it was presented, character-wise, along with introducing characters like Kofu and like Kofu and Kiara and Zira, it's like, what, you couldn't ask for a better sequel to stand alongside one of the greatest animated movies of all time. You couldn't. You just couldn't. So to me, that was good. Now I know you're like I know a lot of you, are going to say, well, what about the Little Mermaid movies? What about the Beauty and the Beast movies? As far as I know, a lot of those sequels, or the Little Mermaid sequels, as far as I know, the two that we had actually were actually well received, just like with the Lion King sequel and the Aladdin sequels. And I do know, in a sense, that one or two of the Beauty and the Beast sequels, I think the Christmas one was decently received, not well received, but decently received by fans, even though it served as a mid-quill because it was a holiday movie. It had some changes here and there. It still served decently in the eyes of a lot of fans. I don't know about Belle's Magical World, which is basically a compilation of shorts, but I thought it was okay. Cinderella, I know some people are going to bring that up. Yes, the sequel to Cinderella, which was basically a compilation of shorts, of all new shorts, didn't do so well. But the third one, definitely in the eyes of a lot, served as a worthy successor and served as the true sequel to Cinderella, and that would be Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, or whatever it was called. So, again, Disney. Again, they're not so innocent themselves because they too have had hits and misses, but I will say they have had more hits than misses at times. But one thing a lot of people will say is that when you do excuse me, let me get some coffee again. Much better. But one thing some people will say that a lot of studios should take from someone like Disney is if you're going to do a direct-to-video movie or a direct-to-video animated movie sequel, basically a sequel to the your original animated feature, that basically you got to do one major thing. Even though the animation could be down a notch or so, may not be on the same level as the theatrical animation. The one thing a lot of people will say, the two most important things is one, by taking a page from Disney and maybe some other studios that do it right, is one, you get a good story, you make sure you have a good story, and two, you keep the characters true to themselves. And you do something that makes people want to see the sequel to the original film, as well as the sequels that follow, if you plan to do one. Alpha and Omega, in the eyes of some, have not done that. True, they might say that 2 and maybe 4 were better than 3, and that 5 might be kind of in between if they're fans of it. But again, fans or not, a lot of people will say that the one thing that they need to do is be consistent with trying to keep the characters true to themselves, as well as have a decent story for them to be portrayed in. Another thing, as well as some people might point out, is if you're going to do a sequel to a movie, and this sequel is going to end up with the main characters being parents now, like in Alpha and Omega, make sure you not only make the parents stay true to themselves, but have the kids have their own unique personalities and maybe some resemblance to the parents. But another thing is if you're going to keep focus on those kid characters, what you need to do with every sequel is not keep them the same freaking age. You need to age them. You need to make them get bigger and bigger and bigger to the point that when you're finally done to finish this all off, they're about the same freaking size, they're full grown and they're the same size as their parents. I mean, you've been doing these sequels for about what? Crest Animation's been doing these sequels for about 2-3 years now? 2 years? 2 years going on 3? And in 3 years you have 4 movies. 4 movies, as far as I know. 2, 3, whatever, 3 years, 2 years. You have 4 movies. And the cubs of Runt, Stinky, and Claudette are still the same age, and yet you got Claudette in a relationship with a character that got introduced in the Great Wolf games in Flint, or in Fleet, or whatever his name is, and yet they're still young. And as Bob said in his latest review of Family Vacation, in a flashback you're basically indicating that these two are going to not only be together as Fleet, or Flint, or whatever Fleet says or mentions in the movie, but you also indicate that these two are going to get it on. But as cubs? No, because that is wrong. And this is coming from a studio, like I said, that was known for doing the Nest Family, a New Testament, animated stories from the New Testament series.